Okay, the big story today out of the UK, the Prime Minister Theresa May announcing her resignation effective June the 7th. She says she has briefed Her Majesty the Queen about her desire to leave. Says she's tried 3 times to secure a yes within the cabinet and the parliament to move UK out of the European Union based on the deal secured with Brussels, but she says that has failed. She says, I've tried my best. Everything I can do to reach a deal had been done. I've tried 3 times. My best effort now is to resign on June the 7th for a new party leader and a prime minister to come on board and lead the efforts of Brexit forward. That's the big story. You saw that, all that here, presentation, very emotional presentation out of Downing Street doorsteps within the last 30 minutes here on the channel. She says she's the 2nd female Prime Minister for the UK, but says definitely will not be the last. And of course, she expressed gratitude to everyone who have seen her 3-year tenure coming to a close on June the 7th. We'll continue our analysis on that, of course, considering Nigeria's very critical economic trade and investment relations with the United Kingdom. Let's get Johnson Chukwu, who is the CEO at Cowry Asset Management, to wade into this very big breaking news right now. Is live to us from Victoria Island in Lagos via Skype. Johnston, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, my pleasure.
Thank you so much. I'm sure you got a bit of that UK Prime Minister, and I'm sure as a market, as a trader, as a chief executive, you have your eye on what is happening in the UK with the Brexit. So she's leaving on June the 7th. This has been a very brutal 3 years for her. In fact, Brexit may have claimed the biggest casualty after Cameron, Prime Minister, got to the referendum, left office. Theresa May is now #1 casualty, despite other ministers, of course, cabinet ministers who had left within the last 3 years.
I think one of the major casualties, but the economy actually has been the greatest casualty in the Brexit window. If you look at what has happened to the British economy in the past 1 year, and just look at the first quarter GDP growth in Britain and UK, you saw a GDP growth of 0.5% in the first quarter compared to 1.8% in the first quarter of 2018. Clearly, this is the delay in resolving the direction of that Brexit, whether the Brexit is going to be on a hard landing, that is no deal, or they'll be able to reach a deal, is taking a toll on the British economy. And I think the earlier she leaves office and allows somebody else who may be able to resolve it either way, the better for the UK economy. And of course, to those other economies that have some relationship with the British economy.
Why do you think so? Some folks argue that the economy hasn't really been doing badly, really. So, what are your prognosis here, Johnson?
Well, if you look at the key parameters, for me, the most important parameter when you want to measure the performance of the economy is one, what direction is the GDP moving? Is it contracting or is it growing? If you, like I mentioned earlier, if you look at the fact that in the first quarter of last year, when it was believed that they should be able to reach a deal, the GDP grew by 1.8%. And the first quarter of this year, the GDP grew by only 0.5%. So an improvement over the 0.2%. In fact, last quarter of that last year, they grew by only 0.2%. And these are not indicators of a healthy economy. These are indicators of the economy tending towards a recession. And for me, the major factor that is impeding the performance of the British economy is not far from the unresolved direction of the Brexit issue.
Johnson, is the fault or the problem with this getting this Brexit deal with Theresa May or with the Parliament and her cabinet?
Well, you know, there's a saying that the buck stops on the leader's table. She is the leader of the Parliament. She's the Prime Minister of Britain. It is her duty to get a necessary consensus. He referred in her tweet about reaching compromise. It is the duty of the Prime Minister to achieve the consensus and ensure that members of the Parliament achieve the compromise that is required to agree on what Britain would be demanding for or what condition the Britain is ready to accept, and whether they are willing to pay the payment, make the payment required for an orderly basis. And she tried on 2 occasions, she wasn't able to get the necessary vote. So I think it's difficult to blame it on the Parliament. The blame should largely go to the leadership of the Parliament, and that rest really on her. And because she has owed up to that responsibility, that's why she decided to throw in the towel.
Okay, so what's your take? What's your outlook on the Brexit with the deadline still ahead down the rest of this year? Do you think her departure on June 7 will calm all the nerves of all the rebellion within the cabinet and the parliament? And do you think the next prime minister will be able to secure a good handshake, a goodbye handshake with Brussels?
It's difficult to say now, given the kind of names that are coming up as likely replacement of Theresa May. I mean, we heard of Boris Johnson, and we know Boris Johnson was the one that drove the Brexit idea and ensured that the British people voted for Brexit. So Boris Johnson takes over as the Prime Minister of Britain, has been speculated as a possible replacement for Theresa May. One is not sure that he's going to find it so easy to achieve an orderly Brexit. We are tending towards a situation where the Brexit will end with a no vote, and which will really hurt the British economy. There's also another window that's open to them, is to do a second Brexit referendum and ask British people again if they really want to choose the European Union. And I want to believe that it's possible if the second referendum is conducted, that the British people can vote against leaving the European Union.
In your opinion, looking into the UK from the outside here in Nigeria, would you support a second referendum to redecide whether to leave the EU or to stay, or you think they should stick with this very contentious divorce papers which was negotiated with the folks in Brussels? Johnson.
I think the appropriate thing for them to do is ask the British. It's almost 3 years after the last vote was taken, and a lot of demographic changes may have taken place. Many people have actually may have thought through it. Many people have seen some of the implications they did not weigh in when they were taking the decision to vote for Brexit. I think the appropriate thing for them, for the Parliament, especially for the British politicians, is to seek people's second opinion. Ask them if they really want to leave Brexit. And if the outcome is that they want to leave Brexit, it becomes easier for the leadership to negotiate an exit term. So they will be emboldened and strengthened by the second vote if the vote is still that the British people should leave the European Union.
In your opinion, looking at the folks in Brussels, do you think they will be more accommodating if there's a second referendum and there is an overwhelming majority, or at least a majority to say we want to stay within the union? How do you think Brussels will be very cozy and want me to say, thank you, we're keeping this marriage, we are sending the divorced guys out of the door?
I want to believe that the Brussels will ordinarily want to keep Britain in the European Union. If you look at the turns and twists that have taken place so far, you recall that Brussels fought Britain another flag by extending the timeline to June this year. And with Theresa May's exit, it's very likely they will resolve to extend it further for the new Prime Minister to have some time to be able to reach an agreement. So if Britain should come up with a second referendum, the Brussels, the European Parliament, is likely going to call them a very good flag to see if the British will vote to remain in the European Union. One of the concerns, which is why Brussels is insisting on very stringent terms for Britain to leave, is that they are concerned that if Britain should leave with a slap on the wrist, some other countries might want to consider the option of leaving the European Union, and that will lead to a collapse of the European Union, which is why the stringent conditions have been imposed on Britain. So I think with all that has been on the ground, the European Parliament would ordinarily pray that the British people reconsider their position to leave the European Union. That way, it will also serve as a deterrent to other countries who might consider contemplating the idea of leaving the European Union.
Why is this entire Brexit and whoever is the UK Prime Minister and all that very important for us here, thousands of miles away in Nigeria? You know,
interestingly, Nigeria has a lot of affinities of relationship with Britain. partly and largely cultural now because Britain has lost its pecking order in terms of our business relationships. Britain is no longer the largest Nigerian trading partner. It's no longer even among the 4-5 topmost trading partners to the country. But we see maintain a very strong cultural relationship with Britain. They were our colonial masters. Several Nigerian families have members of their family in Britain, residents in Britain, legal residents in Britain. We share the same language. And somehow, we also run the educational system. You see a lot of Nigerians sending their children to go and study in Britain. There's so much interaction and affinity between Nigeria and Britain. And Nigeria sees Britain as their second home outside their natural country. And so Nigerians have particular interest on what happens in Britain. Again, on the economic front, a number of Nigerian professionals and diaspora that live in Britain are releasing funds to their families in Nigeria. Should the British economy tank to the point of job losses, it could affect Nigerian families who rely to some extent on home remittances from their folks in Britain. So these are some of the factors that is making the British exit of great concern to the Nigerian population and the Nigerian citizens.
So how do you think this relationship could be bettered? Britain is in the throes of Brexit right now. How do you think the Nigerian authorities, government, should take advantage of this very stormy waters for the British government and reposition our trade and investment, whatever, before the calm comes in, and then so we can be the better, we can hold the better side of the carrot?
I believe this is the time for the Nigerian government to really enter into a number of bilateral relationships with Britain, trade relationships with Britain. Previously, those agreements were subject to European rules, but now Britain is actually looking for trading partners, and now it is likely pushing for a divorce from the European Union. And Nigeria is a natural trading partner to Britain. So we should now push for stronger trading relationships. There are a couple of Nigerian goods that are not easily admitted to the British economy. So what we need to do is agree on the standard the British government wants us to maintain for some of these goods like yam and a couple of things, and ensure that Britain becomes a destination for a lot of Nigerian exports, particularly agricultural products. Today, Britain, unfortunately, is not a strong exporter of finished goods. So if we really push, we should be on the winning side in a trade relationship with Britain, because it's very likely we'll have more to export to Britain, particularly semi-finished goods, agricultural products, than leaving Britain we have to export to Nigeria and financial services. Britain, like I mentioned earlier, it has been going around looking for its former colonial relationships and to resuscitate them and channel their trade activities to those countries away from the European Union. Nigeria is in a poor position to strengthen that and benefit from that.
Okay, so here is it in the news 2 days ago, Johnson, that the London Stock Exchange is doing some stopovers across some major African state capitals, as it were. Nairobi, of course, South Africa, and Joburg will be in Abidjan, in Cairo, in Casablanca, wooing more African companies to come and list on the London Stock Exchange. We've got Seplat on the London Stock Exchange, and of course, that's a big story. One good way in which Nigeria showed. We also did. We have a few of our Eurobonds there as well on the London marketplace. So you think this is all part of what we should leverage on, getting more of our companies listed on the London Stock Exchange? Of course, Dangote Cement has been in the news over the last 1 year or two trying to have that discussion.
For me, it has to do get to the individual firm level or the microeconomic level. For companies to list on the London Stock Exchange, such companies should be in a position to mobilize foreign capital or capital from the Western countries, particularly from the London Stock Exchange or from the European economies. If the operation of a company does not require offshore funding, I do not think there will be a compelling need for that company to go and list on a foreign board. But for companies like Seplat, whose revenue is in dollar, largely in dollar, and whose funding they will actually need cheap funding from dollar-denominated instruments. There is a compelling need for them to list in London Stock Exchange. Similarly, I want to believe, given the size of Dangote Cement operational activities, given the kind of funding they need to further expand, they may want cheap funding from Britain. Of course, that's such, but the concern will be that their revenue is actually naira denominated, so they will suffer, they will be exposed to exchange rate risk. Unlike Seplat, whose product is crude and its earnings are in dollars. So for me, those companies that have dollar-denominated revenue and will require foreign funding at cheaper cost, because currently the cost of even equity in the country is very expensive, and similar cost of debt is also expensive. So companies that want to access long-term capital, either in form of equity and debt and the foreign currency, and who have complementary revenue sources in same currency or foreign currencies, the opportunity for listing in a London Stock Exchange should be grabbed by them. But local companies whose revenues are in naira that may not even be qualified to access foreign currency loans or foreign currency equity may not have a compelling need to go and list on the London Stock Exchange.
Stock Exchange come to Nigeria and they go to they look on our trading board. Aside Seplat, what other companies do you think would qualify for what your idea of who should qualify for a London Stock Exchange listing?
I think a company like MTN can qualify because MTN, being a multinational company, also has earnings in foreign currency outside the country. So in case they want to raise bonds, that first bond can be guaranteed by their parent company. But unfortunately, MTN, most of their revenue are also local currency revenue. So if they want to raise money from London, if it's not equity, if it's debt, they may require a backing of their parent company in South Africa. But beyond that, you all realize that a lot of the business operators in the country whose earnings are largely in foreign currency are not listed. Most of the oil exploration companies are not listed on the exchange. I'm hoping that by the time we pass the oil and gas bill, that of course we're not talking of the bill that has been in the box for the past couple of years. Then probably we should have likes of Shell will now become Shell Nigeria, Mobil, and other things listed. The key element is to ensure that before you borrow in the foreign currency, that you have some foreign currency earnings, or that you go into a financial arrangement that will insulate you against exchange rate devaluation. Otherwise, such foreign currency borrowing could jeopardize your balance sheet, that we've seen in the past, a couple of Nigerian banks.
Okay, so it's been a very interesting week for the Nigerian market, despite the geopolitical routes, the rhetoric between Tehran and Washington and Beijing, and Washington, on the other hand, with Huawei and whatever it is, and number 10 Downing Street, and Mr. President tweeting there. All of these are part of the issues. Thank you so much, Johnson Chukwu, and we'll all move on into the next week when we finish up the month of May.